Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Musician's Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Mark, and today I have the distinct honor of speaking to the one and only St. Paul Peterson, a multi-instrumentalist slash singer from Minneapolis, Minnesota, who at 17 years old was handpicked by Prince himself to become the keyboard player in The Time for the Purple Rain movie. This also led to Paul having affiliations with Morris Day and The Family before becoming a solo artist and scoring hits for MCA and Atlantic Records. Additionally, St. Paul has also worked and toured with artists like Steve Miller, Peter Frampton, George Benson, Kenny Loggins, and the Corrs, among many others. Nowadays, he tours with his band St. Paul and the Minneapolis Funk All-Stars, which I strongly suggest you check out, and also has his own podcast. We talk about all of this and so much more during today's episode, which I hope you enjoy. Please let me remind you that if you're getting anything from these interviews, to please leave us a rating or review on your preferred streaming platform. And also don't forget to check out our affiliation with the lovely folks over at Soundbrenner. There's a link in our show notes. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only St. Paul Peterson.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, man. Really good.
Good. Alrighty. St. Paul Peterson, welcome to the Musician's Mentor Podcast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. We had a couple minutes to chat before this thing got rolling. Thank you, firstly, for joining me. It's going to be a great conversation. What I do, and has become a bit of a standard format for the show, is I always ask my guests, rather than me straight off the bat giving an introduction during our interview, which I'll record in post, is just tell my listeners in a brief kind of blurby sort of way who St. Paul Peterson is.
This is going to be the world's longest intro. No, I'm just kidding. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on. I really appreciate it. We've been trying to get this going for a few months, and I'm glad we finally figured it out. So that's great. Who is St. Paul Peterson? First of all, I'm a musician. I'm an artist. I'm a singer. I'm a producer. I'm an arranger. I'm all things music. Music has consumed my life from the day I was born. I was born into a family of musicians. My 5 brothers and sisters all make music for a living, and so did my mom and dad. And being the youngest, I really benefited by being the youngest because I thought that every kid played an instrument. You know, I thought little Johnny down the block was supposed to play the guitar or something because everybody in my family played something. And it really set me up for success and a beautiful life. And, you know, it's been a great ride so far.
Incredible. I saw the musical family thing. I mean, obviously, a few of you have very high accolades, so it wasn't hard to find information here. Tell me what growing up in general with siblings who played instruments was like. Like, did it get competitive musically, or was it really more a supportive thing, like maybe brothers playing something and he shows you, or sisters playing something and they show you?
It was definitely not a competitive thing. If anything, that was supportive. When I was 15, 16 years old, my sisters would hire me in their bands. And actually, my brother Ricky would hire me to sub on keyboards for him when I was that age as well. It was absolutely supportive and not competitive at all, and still is that way to this day.
That's incredible. Okay, so we're going to fast forward quite dramatically, you know, before we get like all your backstory and all that kind of stuff. I obviously am a huge Prince fan, you know, and how can I not talk to you about the affiliation there? During my research, and I'm sure you've spoken about this before, so I'm not trying to come across as redundant, but I obviously know that Prince kind of discovered you around 83. I saw you were still a teenager, to replace one of the members in The Time, and then eventually went on to be in the Purple Rain movie. And I mean, this is massive stuff. You know, I mean, I don't think people even understand how massive that movie was back in the day. Still has a cult following. Anyway, a couple things. In general, talk to me about how that Prince discovery came about. And then, you know, I read online that I think the term on your Wikipedia page was that he had kind of groomed you to replace this member in the band. So trying to think about how that situation would have worked, if you wouldn't mind, talk to me a little bit about some of the things that Prince might have given you insight to or educated you on. Were they just musically performance related things? Were they how to play your instrument things? Was it a whole life situation? A whole broad scope would be wonderful.
Well, let's answer your first question first, which is how did I get the gig with Prince, right?
Yep.
So I was an active musician playing with my sister in a band when I was in high school. The drummer in the band, her boyfriend at the time, Stuart Pastor, is first cousins with Bobby Z, the drummer in The Revolution. And he caught wind that there was going to be an opening in the time. And I had just graduated from high school, and I got a phone call from him while I was on vacation. He said, "Get your butt back here. I've got an audition for you with Morris Day and the Time." And naturally, I sprinted back home. To make a long story short, I had to learn many, many songs the night before the audition, learn how to play them, memorize them, vocals, how to try to dance, which was hilarious back then and still is hilarious today, really, and be prepared for what that was, which was an incredible opportunity. So I just went in there, did the best I could, and that's me playing keyboards at this point in time. I got a call back from for the audition, and the second audition, Prince happened to be there, and the rest is history. The next thing I knew, we were making Purple Rain, and I had a double platinum record on my wall for the record Ice Cream Castles, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, which is hard for me to believe. Yeah. So that's question number one.
Yeah.
Question number two, you asked me about
some of the insight that Prince might have shared with you.
Well, I would say that he didn't necessarily sit me down and go, "Okay, here's the plan." That wasn't how Prince was. Prince was a doer, and you just had to hang on for dear life. So he taught me by example. So he showed me by example how to put together a show, how to market a band, how to come up with sequencing for a record, how to produce a record, how to produce a vocal, how to just so many different things, the look of a band, all these different things that I just drank in at that point in time in my life. But we never really sat down and said, "Well, here's your education." But I will say that this was the greatest music college that ever was on planet Earth, better than anything that I could ever imagine. And I taught for 20 years at a music college. And it's funny, if you are receptive and willing to learn, there's a lot of knowledge out there for people just like what there was for me with Prince.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other people out there at these great music colleges, but you have to be receptive and you have to take action.
Yeah. No, I have to agree. And I can only imagine what it must have been like. I mean, I'm, as I said previously, huge Prince fan, which leads me to huge fan of all Prince affiliations and band members and just so many different things going on there. We'll get into it about how eventually you land up as one of the first bands on his label, but we'll kind of circle back to that if we get the time. Talk to me about, in addition to all of the Prince-related affiliations, you had worked with or have worked with artists, and I'm going to just mention some, like Peter Frampton, Steve Miller, Kenny Loggins, George Benson. The list goes on and on and on. I can't credit them all. We'll run out of time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, and this is going to seem like a bit of a strange question, but is there anything that might help our listeners potentially try and gain access into a world of like higher level work like that? And if so, like just little tips or nuggets that you might be able to share. If so, what could you potentially advise listeners who maybe get the opportunity to start doing higher profile gigs on what they should/might want to consider doing to try and keep those high profile gigs? Some guys get egos and get fired, and that's essentially what I'm trying to say. How would we avoid that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you need to be open to all genres of music. Never bat an eye at something you may not love, but figure out why the song works. Why is it a hit? What is it about this song I don't necessarily like, or this genre that I don't necessarily like? What makes it tick? Deconstruct it, right? And find out what the bass player is saying, or if you're a bass player, find out how the keyboard player plays. If there's a interesting part in there, find the pieces that make this thing a hit and learn from it instead of just going, man, I hate that stuff. I'm not going to do that. Because guess what? One day you may be playing for the top of the top, have the opportunity, and you're going to want that opportunity. So you have to understand the genre. So be open, right? That's number one. That's the biggest thing. And then as far as, I like your question about how do you keep the gig? As you know, when you're on the road, you might work for 3 hours out of the entire day. So the rest of the time you're spent on the tour bus, in hotels, in airplanes, whatever. This is a business. And I can tell you as a band leader, the things that drive me crazy is people not answering texts, phone calls, or emails. Number two, not showing up on time. Right? That's a killer for me. Number three, not being prepared. Don't practice at the rehearsal. You better have everything together by the time you walk in my basement door. That's where we rehearse, because all that is supposed to be is a refresher, talk about new ideas. That isn't where we learn the material. And just be a good person, no backstabbing, no egos, none of that stuff flies for anybody, because no one has time for that.
Yeah.
We are very lucky to be able to make music for a living. We play music. We don't work music. So we get there. We don't want it to be work. We want to be able to play, because that's where the heart and the healing comes from, is from that attitude.
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. I couldn't agree more. You mentioned the road there. So let's talk about touring for a couple of minutes, if you wouldn't mind. Obviously, no stranger to spending a lot of time on the road, especially with even just half of the artists I already mentioned. So again, a bit of a two-part question. One, once the excitement of, hey, I'm on the road, wears off, and you realize that maybe you're going to be there for a while, and you're in all these different towns or cities or countries or continents, whatever you want to kind of consider, what can you do to personally get the most out of touring? So I'm not necessarily talking about a musical level. I'm talking about for you as a human.
Mm-hmm.
And two, what do you personally do, or what have you done to stay healthy and sane while on the road, especially on the lengthier tours?
You're stealing my concept for my whole. You must listen to my podcast.
Oh, we're going to talk about your podcast.
What I talk about. Yeah, that's the main premise of my podcast. Are those two questions right there? So good on you. That's pretty cool. What I do when I go on the road is I get my butt out of bed and into the city. Get out and explore as much as you can. I'm a runner, or I like to think that I am, even though my knees hate me right about now. But the best way to see the city is walking or running, and just get out there and see what it's all about. It's just such a beautiful world out there, and really drink in the cultures. Don't let anything intimidate you. ask questions, talk to people, go into a local coffee shop instead of the Starbucks of the world or whatever the case may be. Um, just go exploring. And it gets tough because I'm a family man, and I toured when there was an iPhone, so it was very difficult more difficult, I would say, to communicate back home with brothers and sisters, mom, girlfriend, wife, whatever the case may be. That has been made so much easier now. All you got to do is FaceTime, and that's really an art to make sure that you communicate well and keep your home fires alive. Super important that you really pay attention to what's going on in your home life, because that's really what's important. You're on the road for a purpose, and that is to play music, but the proceeds from that music are for back home, right? That's what's really important. What was the second part of that question?
What have you done, or what do you do to try and stay healthy on the road? But I mean, you might have technically answered that. If you're into running, I would imagine you're probably staying pretty active while you're out there.
I remember the last big tour I did for somebody else was the Frampton tour, and I was training for the Chicago Marathon, and I just ran. I'd literally put on my shoes and go get lost for 10 miles, and there was always an Uber if I got too tired or whatever. Just that's what I do. A lot of my friends, like my brother Ricky, he likes to go down to the gym. He has a routine where he'll have a cup of coffee, he'll call his buddy, they'll go to the gym, they'll hang out, they'll lift weights, then they'll have lunch and walk to town. That's what he does. Everybody has a different routine, but establish something that's healthy. I don't drink anymore. I drank for a living when 25 years ago, and it stopped working for me. So I would say, and one of the things that I would recommend for anybody out there is just be very careful with your choices, because people are watching. Your boss is watching. People don't want you hungover and snippy and all that kind of thing. You got to really keep an eyeball on the party. I'm not saying what you should or shouldn't do. Just be cautious.
Yeah, good advice. Tell me, side note here, have you ever heard of a German band called Rammstein?
No.
They're really massive in Europe. They'll headline stadiums and stuff over there, arenas, the huge band. And the first time I saw this band, Motley Crue had actually played prior to them, which made me realize the scope of how big they are over there.
Right.
And the reason I'm bringing this up is one of the most amazing shows I've ever seen. I'm not necessarily that's not necessarily the genre that I would go to as a sort of a relaxing listen sort of thing, but it was very interesting. The keyboard player, the entire 2 hours that they played was on a treadmill. So the keyboard, I've never seen anything like it.
Oh,
and I swear to God, it's true.
That's...
You could probably YouTube it. The keyboard was like, it had been designed, so it didn't look like he was in a gym kind of thing. But the keyboard, he's mounted of keyboards around him. And the whole time his legs are just moving. And I tell you, at first I kind of smirked and was like, that dude's on a treadmill. And after a 2-hour show, I was like, that guy's got to be so fit, because that, he was on it and he was exercising the entire time. It was really something to see. I'll see if I can find a link and I'll send it your way.
Do that.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the St. Paul and Minneapolis Funk All-Stars. Now, this is obviously how I actually came to know you, because a mutual friend of ours sent me a clip and he was like, you should talk to Paul. I was like, okay, yeah. So talk to me about how the idea for the project came together. Talk to me about what the project's currently up to. And then I know you briefly touched on some of the things that you look for as a band leader, but in addition to that, are there any pieces of advice or tips that you could potentially offer the listeners about starting or running their own bands?
Well, the Minneapolis Funk All-Stars started out probably in the mid-'90s as the Minneapolis All-Stars. We put out a record on Go Jazz Records, which is that was run by Ben Sidran out of Madison, Wisconsin, a great jazz artist in himself. This is something I put together because, number one, I wanted to feature the music of Minneapolis, the R&B sounds of Minneapolis, the different hits that have come out. Prince and Funky Town, Lip Sync, and so many other great artists that have been through there. And I also wanted to use it as a educational tool. So the one tour we did prior to the record was down south. We would go into colleges and give master classes, right, to music students and talk about exactly what we're talking about right here. It was the life on the road, how to be successful in our opinion, and just some life advice and, of course, playing advice. Fast forward to when Prince died. The band was already working, and I had been going over to Australia quite a bit and doing touring throughout the States. But it took on new meaning when Prince died because we felt that it was our duty to carry on the Minneapolis sound with integrity and authenticity because we were the ones who were there. And he's no longer here to play his own music. And it's such a huge part of my life and my career that, I spearheaded this band to do exactly that and really carry on the tradition of that beautiful music that he created. And we worked more in the last 10 years than we've ever thought possible. And it's been great. What a great catalog to choose from. And it's been fun to play with the people who were there. Kirk Johnson, Jellybean Johnson, Lisa Fiorello, Sue Ann Carwell, Odell from Mint Condition, Dr. Fink, Jason Peterson, Dallaire, Oliver Lieber. How many names? And lots of gigs with Shelby J, Liv Warfield, the late Tyka Nelson. Just a lot of goodwill and efforts to keep that going. And the second part of that question, if somebody was going to start a band, what should you do? Have a killer show. Number one, pick great music. Hopefully your music, that if it's yours, is great. Learn how to pace a show. Go to one of your favorite artists and see why they sequenced the concert to the way they did. Ebbs and flows and things like that. Have some surprises. I have a very visual part of my show. We have screens going all the time. Might be something to consider. Multimedia seems to be a very important part of a lot of shows now. Consider doing something like that. It's a lot to take on, but the benefits that you have from all the work that you put in are incredible. And that's really all I would do is just play well, have great arrangements, and you'll turn some heads.
What about, and this is again a spin it on its head, hypothetical kind of situation type question. I'm assuming you've got small pockets of teams, maybe a booking agent, maybe a tour manager, maybe a road agent. I don't know. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm assuming you do. If you are out there now, we're competing with so much screen time, right? It used to be that you were competing against bands. Now you're competing against bands and Netflix and YouTube and TikTok and all these kinds of things. How would you personally, with the knowledge and expertise that you have, try and scale your band? So if you're in an area like Minneapolis, I would imagine you grow locally and then move out. But how would you do it if you don't have booking agents and you don't have managements and you're purely independent?
Get on a phone.
Yeah.
Really. You have to don't wait on anybody. You have to be your own advocate. Find out who similar artists are to yourself. See where they're playing. call the clubs, right? You probably will lose some money on your first couple of tours. You be ready to invest in yourself, right? But guess who reaps the benefits when you hit it? You do. And
Yeah.
you should make sure that you remember that. There are always dues to pay. And it's not an easy life. I mean, you got to want this, man. If you just want to half-ass this, do yourself a favor and get out now. But if you really want it, you have to be 110% in. I'm just turned 60 years old. But I tell you what, I work harder than anybody I know to keep what I've got and to develop it into something bigger and better and more fun. And I do the bulk of the work myself because I choose to. Oh, just work hard, man, and get on the phone and you'll find your way.
Yeah. Beautiful. So, on that note, what do you feel has been the hardest part about being a career musician for you personally?
Oh, well, I mean, lack of stability, maybe. You really sometimes when you're independent, you don't necessarily have a solid paycheck coming in every 2 weeks like the rest of the world does. So it's either feast or famine, right? So I taught for 20 years and I said there is no shame in having a day gig at all because if you're stressed out about money, how can you be at your creative best? You just can't because you're too worried about how am I going to pay for my car? How am I going to pay for rent? Screw that. Until you are on your feet as an artist, keep the day gig. I mean, that's where I'm coming from. I believe your art will be better. You'll make better music. And once you get to the point where you go, oh, I think I can do this, then move out of that. But until then, it's perfectly acceptable to have a steady income. So I would say stability is probably the hardest thing about being a career musician.
Agreed. Talk to me for a few minutes, if you wouldn't mind, about the Music on the Run podcast. What was the motivation behind starting it? How's it all going? And I imagine it's pretty similar to this, where you're talking to friends and then sometimes friends lead to different new friends and so on and so on. But what's your experience been like?
We've had a ball with it. I'm on my 64th episode. My last 4 interviews were done at the NAMM show in the beginning of this year, and the next 4 will be at the NAMM show in the beginning of next year. We've taken a step back. We're not doing 1 or 2 every month. Something had to give because I'm doing a lot of work here in the Minneapolis area, and something had to give. And I ain't getting any younger, so I'm doing it a little less often. But yet the content that we provide people is pretty outstanding. We really concentrate on getting behind the scenes, find out what make artists tick. We talk about their home life. How do they keep their home fires burning while they're on the road or in the studio? Just like the question you asked me, how do they keep in shape? What do they do? How do they keep their mental health on task? Those are the kind of things that people don't really take into consideration when they go and hear Billie Eilish or something like that.
Totally. It's also, not to keep you too long, because I have one more question and I know you need to go, but
thank you.
It's also something that I've spoken about with some of my previous guests. It's like, it's great that education musically is so easy to access now. It's beautiful. I mean,
oh yeah,
what an incredible thing. But I do find that nobody talks about some of the things that you and I spoke about today, or what you talk about on your podcast, or what I talk about with some of my other guests. It's like there is a lot more to music life, if you want to term it that, than just playing your guitar all day or your keyboard all day or your drums all day, whatever your instrument of choice is.
Right.
So I'll put a link to that in my show notes, and I definitely suggest that people listening to this should go and listen to that. All right, St. Paul Peterson, last question for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Overall, what do you think has been either the best piece of advice you've ever received in regards to your own musical career, or if you can't think of something there, what do you think has been something you've learnt along the way that you feel could help an up-and-coming musician with their journey?
I think the best piece of advice I can give that I've learned over the years is to be 100% unapologetically yourself. Right? I mean, as an artist, I'm not talking about personality or different things like that. I'm talking about your artistry. Don't follow the trends. Follow what you do, because what you do separates you from the 10 million other people who make music. People want to listen to you because you sound like you and you alone. You know, that's really a hard lesson to learn, especially if you're trying to listen to managers or record labels. Oh, you got to make a rock record. Oh, you should sound more like this. I got caught up in that and I got lost. And it took me a long time to just go, these people don't know me. Why did I listen to them? Yeah. Why did I get lost? So be 100% authentically yourself as an artist.
Beautiful. All right, Paul, we're going to end it there. Thank you so much for your time. Truly appreciate it. I wish you nothing but the best for everything you do. I'm following your journey. And, I say this fairly often, but I truly mean it. If you ever find yourself down in my area, New Orleans, hit me up. We'll go for some beignets or something,
I'd love it. All right, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, man. You as well. Take care, okay? Peace.
Bye.
Okay, there we have it. A slightly shorter than usual, but highly influential interview with the one and only St. Paul Peterson. I'd like to thank Paul for his time. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your time. If you're needing any advice or help with your band or your artist career, please drop me a DM or email me at musicians-mentor.com. My name is Travis Mark. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, work hard, be diligent, and be a good person. Peace.